Welcome in. Go ahead and take a deep, slow breath, pull up a comfy chair by the fire, and just settle in. Think of today's explainer as a dedicated coaching session. It's a safe space of reflection just for you. Today, we're walking through a really profound practice known as the C.A.P.A.C.I.T.Y framework for boundary stewardship. So if you ever feel stretched way too thin, well, you're in the exact right place.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Over on one side, we've got people-pleasing and urgency. You absolutely know the feeling, right? That exhausting, never-ending cycle of automatic, guilt-driven yeses that just leave you totally depleted. You're staring at your calendar wondering how on earth you accidentally volunteered to bake 3 dozen cupcakes for a bake sale you don't even care about. But on the flip side, we have our ultimate goal for this coaching session: sustainable presence. We want to move you away from that reactive exhaustion and firmly into a grounded, intentional space.
Now, to actually get there, we need to figure out what boundary stewardship really is. Put simply, it's about preserving the inner structure required to show up with honesty, clarity, compassion, and strength. You might be familiar with some of those quick public-facing tools out there, like the S.P.A.C.I.T.Y practice, but what we're doing today goes way deeper. This is a profound diagnostic check-in, and it proves that boundaries aren't actually about pushing people away at all. Actually, they're about holding yourself together.
To make this framework truly actionable for you, we're going to break it down into 3 phases. Starting with phase 1, the internal check-in. This covers the first 3 letters, C, A, and P.
And this brilliantly illustrates how the internal check-in involves 3 steps. Check your capacity, acknowledge what is yours, and protect your energy. Think of these 3 steps as your immediate pause button. Seriously, before you automatically jump in to rescue someone or blindly agree to take on yet another task, you've got to hit this pause button. Let's break each of these down real quick.
Here's that very first C. Ask yourself, do I have the capacity for this right now? Just imagine a coworker messages you at, say, 4 p.m. on a Friday asking if you can just take a quick look at a massive project. I want you to just pause right there and feel what it's like to actually ask yourself about your true capacity before typing back, "Sure, no problem." It's incredibly powerful. Asking this single question directly interrupts that intense urge to people please. It literally halts urgency and guilt-driven availability right in its tracks before you've committed to a thing. Now, what's really interesting about this next slide is the A. Acknowledge what is yours. Notice the specific verbs we're using here: carry, choose, repair, communicate, decide. This step creates some much-needed differentiation. It separates your actual, genuine responsibilities from that insidious urge to overfunction or to rescue others from their own responsibilities. You simply can't carry everything. Stepping in to fix a colleague's procrastination, for example, that is not actually yours to repair.
And that brings us to the P, protect your energy. Now, I want to completely reframe this for you today. Protecting your energy is absolutely not an act of rejection against someone else. It's an act of deeply necessary self-stewardship. Listen, if you want to remain grounded, honest, and present in your life and your work, you literally have to protect the energy required to do so. So once we've checked in with ourselves, we move right along to phase 2, aligning with meaning. This covers our second A and C.
This phase, it's all about taking that protected energy and giving it intentional direction outward. Step 1, align with meaning. Step 2, communicate with clarity. It's absolutely crucial that your boundary isn't just some wall you throw up in a panic. It needs to be a conscious choice, and it needs to be visibly clear to the people around you.
To really get this second A, align with meaning, we draw some inspiration from the concepts of psychiatrist and philosopher Viktor Frankl. The goal here is to ensure your boundary becomes a meaningful action rather than just a reactive one. You see, a reactive boundary is born out of stress and frustration. A meaningful boundary, on the other hand, is born out of purpose.
Ask yourself, what choice reflects my values, not just my fear, guilt, or pressure? Now, really take a second with that. If your boundaries are constantly being dictated by outside pressure or maybe a fear of letting someone down, well, they aren't really yours, are they? Let your core values drive your choices today.
So the crucial point here is how we handle the C, communicate with clarity, because unspoken limits always lead to resentment. You just cannot expect others to read your mind, and being frustrated that they can't, that is a recipe for disaster. Making your boundary visible is essential. It must be said simply, it must be said kindly, and it must be said directly. Communicating with clarity is honestly the only way to avoid silent frustration.
Which brings us to our final leg of the journey, phase 3, clear relational execution. This covers the I, T, and Y, focusing on how we actually integrate these boundaries compassionately into our real-world relationships.
Let's move to and see how this all builds together. These final actions ensure we actually stay connected. We identify the access level, we tend the relationship, and finally, we yield to integrity. These 3 steps are kind of the secret to the whole framework, because they allow us to stay deeply connected to the people we care about, but without resorting to self-abandonment.
So the I stands for identify the access level. And the big question here is, what level of access is appropriate here? As your coach, I really have to remind you of this hard truth. Not everyone needs or deserves the exact same level of access to you. An acquaintance from some networking event doesn't get the same access to your weekend time, your home, or your emotional labor as your absolute closest friend. You get to decide what level is appropriate for each situation.
Next up is the T, tend the relationship. And the guiding question for this one is, how can I remain respectful without betraying myself? Look, tending the relationship means your boundary remains relational and compassionate. Setting a boundary should never, ever become an excuse to be cold, rigid, or punitive towards someone else. You absolutely can hold a firm line while still holding a warm heart. Let's look at the full picture for a second. Check capacity, acknowledge yours, protect energy, align with meaning, communicate clearly, identify access, tend relationship, and yield to integrity. This is your entire diagnostic toolkit. It's a mental snapshot you can take home from our little retreat today to clarify what you can realistically hold in your life.
And that brings us to the final why, yield to integrity. I want you to ask yourself right now, what is the aligned next action? This is where the boundary becomes embodied. It's no longer just an internal thought or some abstract theory. It transitions into a practiced, lived reality. As you step out of this coaching space today, I want to leave you with that exact challenge. What is the one next action you can take to honor your capacity and live in your integrity? Think about it, and then go do it. Thanks so much for joining me for this session.